Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 17 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Song. Absent. Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Rodina.
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Absent. Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer. Here. Councilmember Ackman.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
Councilmember Cornell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
Just briefly, Mayor, this afternoon I removed CA9 from the agenda. That's the item having to do with the transaction of 350 South 5th Street. We simply didn't have enough time to answer the questions that we were getting, so we'll bring the item back the second meeting in August.
Thank you. There are no introductions today, and so we roll directly into public comment. Public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Alex Lowe.
Alex Lowe is on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast East Ann Arbor. A brief word on C1. While I'm glad to see that these parcels will be zoned R1D instead of the ridiculous R1A district that essentially acts as a filter to allow only the ultra wealthy to live in an area. The fact that as a city we're still preventing people from building duplexes on their own property really saddens me. It's an indicator that, as a city, we still aren't taking seriously the goal of allowing anyone, not just the wealthy, to live here. I'm sure the move would be unpopular with our local landlords, but most of us who live in the present and don't have a vested interest in exacerbating the housing crisis would support you in making it possible for all residential zones to have duplexes on them. Speaking of things that local landlords are likely to oppose, I'm excited to see CA9 come back onto the agenda in August. I hope that when it does, it doesn't do what is effectively removing $6.2 million from the Affordable Housing Fund, as that seems like a bit of a negative side effect of this. Finally, I want to address sidewalk gaps and bike lane gaps, especially in light of the recent death of someone who was riding a scooter in the space available to them and got hit and killed by a motorist. We need to make non-motorized transportation more of a priority. At the current rate of buildings, bike lanes, we're never going to achieve a full network of all ages and abilities bike lanes. We need to start speeding it up, and we need to stop accepting cars as the ultimate default all the time, and rather allow everyone onto our streets equally.
30
Thank
seconds.
you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Naomi Zickmund Fisher.
Good evening. My name is Naomi Zickmund Fisher, and I am the Secretary of the National Lawyers Guild Detroit and Michigan chapter. I'm here on behalf of the NLG and the lawyers and legal workers throughout the state who make up our membership to express our outrage concerning the conduct of the Ann Arbor Police Department. Last Wednesday, July 12th, the volunteers of Fed Up Ministries were, as they do each week, feeding our community from their free food truck at Liberty Plaza. Officers from the AAPD used this occasion to arrest a citizen for a minor crime that was alleged to have occurred in another place and on another day. Their protestations to the contrary notwithstanding, this is not the first time the AAPD has carried out arrests at locations set up to serve the hungry and unhoused. We urge this council to take concrete steps to ensure that this is the last. No one should ever have to choose between food and their freedom. Prosecuting petty theft cannot and must not be held as more important than the basic human right to sustenance. The good people at Fed Up Ministries are an important part of the safety net that supports the most marginalized and underserved in our community. Using their work as bait for law enforcement undermines their ability to continue to serve our citizens and is frankly grotesque. Where are our priorities? What do we value as a community? Are alleged violations of property rights truly more important than the human rights of our most valuable residents, our most vulnerable residents? It shows an utter lack of vision for this city to place law enforcement above all else. In what way was anyone truly protected or served by the Ann Arbor Police last Wednesday? In what way did any of us benefit by making it more dangerous to feed or be fed in Ann Arbor? Finally, let me point out that if we, society at large, citizens of Washtenaw County, or specifically this council, were meeting our obligations to all of our citizens, Fed Up Ministries would not need to be feeding our neighbors at Liberty Plaza each Wednesday. No one would be resorting to petty theft to survive. And the Ann Arbor Police, regardless of their priorities, would have had no one to arrest last week. The police can do better. This council can do better, both in supervising the police and in serving everyone in our community. And our community can do better. On behalf of the members of the National Lawyers Guild, Detroit and Michigan chapter, we urge you to do so.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Cohen.
Excellent, thank you.
Good evening. I'm David William Cohen, a Northside resident. Say hello to the Huron River Water Trail. You are invited to keep the river healthy and beautiful. As people are getting outside in record numbers, the need to put leave no trace skills and ethics into action is more imperative than ever. I quote there from the permanent Leave No Trace plaque installed adjacent to the Argo livery office. Yesterday, the New York Times had an op-ed about the growing importance of river recreation in our time of global warming. It focused on Munich's Isar River as green infrastructure, serving the needs and desires of thousands of urban residents. Ann Arbor's Huron River could have been included, a site of exponential growth of human activity, the centerpiece being the Cascades. I love the Cascades, the sound of falling water, the lovely walkway on the berm, the grasses on the banks. Sunday early, I watched expert kayakers practicing maneuvers. Recently, I encountered a young woman reading a book at the foot of the Cascades amid dozens of tubers. The city should be proud of the Cascades amenity. In 2012, converting a murky head race into an intended kayak and canoe playground as part of a costly project to save Argo Dam and Pond. I appreciate this. But the Cascades plan failed in significant ways. 3 Cascades that were planned became 9. Canoeing was considered hazardous and canoers were redirected to an alternate portage. Not foreseen tubing became number 1. And ever-growing numbers were bringing their own inflatables, bypassing the livery office. So many people from a wide region seeking a blast at a very small site. overwhelming the Cascades neighborhood with traffic, parking issues, litter, and drinking. Early on, neighbors began speaking up. In 2012, police stepped up patrols to deal with the Cascades chaos. Parking restrictions were introduced, and council members seemed to be listening, even joining in with us to collect trash. Nevertheless, the issues of the Cascades traffic have grown year by year. I have two questions. Can the city bring a comprehensive approach to the protection of our neighborhood's security and well-being? Would the city accept this chaos at other parks, facilities, golf courses, ice rinks, swimming pools, softball fields, special events venues? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lafiste Gallimore.
Good evening. Greetings to the mayor, the city council, and staff. The reason that I wanted to come here tonight is to speak about the reparation initiative that the city council is getting ready to, I guess, initiate. I think that before you initiate a reparation committee, you should meet with some of the people that used to live here, that has been moved out of this community. You should listen to some of the pain and anger that they have regarding, how they've been gentrified out of the community. There are people that are born here that cannot afford to live here. Those are the kinds of things that I think when you're looking at reparation, you should include that in the conversation, because that's one of the reasons why we need that. For example, we look at City Hall and the employment ratio here. There's very few black employees here. If you go out on these construction sites, you don't see any black men, the kind of jobs that we used to do, the hard stuff. You don't see that anymore because they're good paying jobs. So people that really could benefit from that are not being able to benefit. So I think those are the kinds of things that you should look at when you talk about establishing a recreation task force, because those are the kinds of things that you need to take into consideration. Because just create an initiative, is not something that is valuable. I would also like to speak to the issue. I think I read in the paper about a month and a half ago where there was a presentation made by the city administrator to build housing, attached to City Hall. And that I think the statement was that there will be no low-income housing, affordable housing. And I find that to be contradictory to what the city is about. The city should be looking at taking care of those individuals, especially if we're going to be using city property to build housing. People that can't afford housing otherwise should be given an opportunity to live in this structure. After all, this is the people's house. We pay their taxes. We support this. So I think that to say that these units, whenever they are bound to come about, would not be open to people that with low income. I don't think that's morally right. And I would like to congratulate Sister Cynthia Harrison for being a part of this initiative. I knew her mother, I knew her father, I knew her family, and they would be proud of you for taking the initiative that you're taking. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ali Ramlawi.
Good evening, Council. I'm glad that CA9 has been pulled from the agenda for further consideration. I'll keep my comments brief and maybe back in August once I see what the next iteration will look like. As a part of Council of 2018 through 2022, I co-sponsored the millage for affordable housing. I also co-sponsored the resolutions to transfer the city-owned property to the Housing Commission for a nominal fee of, I think, $1 to build affordable housing. As we all know, this site has a long history of affordable housing. Affordable housing was there before things were torn down and left vacant. So it was alarming for me to see that Council had thought of essentially reneging on prior commitments. While on Council, I was reminded that promises made are promises kept. There was the 40-40-20 resolution, which I tried unsuccessfully to overturn. Yet, it was vetoed, and promises were made and promises were kept. When the millage was passed, we all knew it was not enough money. We were going to need hundreds of millions of dollars to address affordable housing, not just 120 or 150 million. It was just one tool at our disposal, a big tool, to transfer city-owned property to the Housing Commission to build affordable housing. In 2017 and 2018, we heard the value of leveraging dollars so that we can use low-income or housing tax credits to leverage 5 million for it to become 50 million. I am just here today urging this council to reconsider this thought, which I believe is a financial shell game. It is to free up $5 million from the general fund to then spend on other initiatives and projects. Many of you campaigned, most of you, if not all, some were uncontested. But when you're out there, you hear from folks affordable housing is the #1 issue. And since COVID, it's even become more acute of an issue. I urge this council to honor past resolutions and transfer this property for next to nothing to the Housing Commission. Do not go ahead with taking $5 million from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
Real reparations, real fast, right now. Now on to my talk. At the last City Council meeting, we heard from Councilmember Chris Watson about how he is rightfully afraid of the police. He is rightfully afraid of the police. So you might guess that Watson would identify with Palestinians who are rightfully afraid of being kidnapped and killed by the Israeli military, not just pulled over. But no, unless Watson is the one, and he cannot even make eye contact. There we go, eye contact. But no, unless Watson is the one getting pulled over and killed himself, he simply doesn't care who Israel kills with his money. Doesn't care at all, far as I can tell. Correct me if I'm wrong. Israel was almost founded in Uganda in 1905, except the white settlers stopped the whole plan. So instead of massacring Africans, Israel went over and established itself in Palestine to massacre Palestinians. It could have been Africans. Israel tried to give nuclear weapons, the atomic bomb, to apartheid South Africa to kill black people, Chris. To kill black people, Chris. But Councilmember Watson is too busy to care, too busy crying like a baby over the sufferings of the European Holocaust, which ended in 1945. What a pitiful sissy. What a pitiful sissy. He knows what white supremacist state violence is. He knows, but don't ask him for a Palestinian human rights resolution or he's liable. Oh, there goes Iyer running away from the room.
That's okay, we don't need.
We're going to talk about you in a minute. Don't ask him for a Palestinian human rights resolution or else he'll get down on his knees and cry over the tragedy of white Europeans. Over white Europeans. But white Europeans are not afraid of the police today. They don't need your tears, Chris. Palestinians need you. And Iyer is whispering in his ear, God only knows why. Do you think it's right, Chris, for Palestinians to pay for the Holocaust? Palestinians? Who gave you that sick idea? Pitiful as Councilmember Watson is, Jen Iyer sitting there is worse. Iyer took campaign money from old friends of the Israel Defense Forces, and you know the IDF is just like the Ku Klux Klan, except you're paying them $3.8 billion every year. And look, Iyer is now sinking the whole reparations boat for black people, trying to pit black and native people against each other and put them at each other's throats for reparations money. She wants the best and brightest minds to decide reparations. Who is that? Her consultant friends? Her consultant cronies?
Our next,
Good night.
Our next speaker is Mojan Savabiasafani.
Okay. All right. Hello, Ann Arbor. I'm here to go over what has happened in the past couple of weeks. The last city council meeting, we, the people, managed to put the issue of reparations to Black America on the table. These people here and their buddies before them, no one ever did that. The people of this town put the issue of reparations on the agenda, on the discussion table a couple of weeks ago. And there is an article in the Ann Arbor News, you can go look it up, and you can see how all these people are belly aching about, oh yeah, how they really want to do it. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it. Like Blaine said, in the 1800s, Black people were asking for reparations. They would say, give us a mule and 40 acres and we would sustain ourselves. Did they give it to them? No. These people have no intentions of giving anything to Blacks or red people or native people or anything, as much as they say they might, and they don't say it much. But anyway, they have no intention. We have to kick their ass into actually doing it. So I want to ask everyone in Ann Arbor to come here, speak for reparations, and let's push and force these people to do it. Again, as Blaine said, and as you can see from everyone who speaks here, the population in this town is not happy with the record that this bunch has. This bunch gets pushed into their places by the donations they accept from the ultra wealthy in this town. They take over the seats and they vote, all of them, with Mr. Mayor here, who is the man for, deciding what goes and what doesn't go. So we want a representative city government. This is not representing the people. As you can see, after 20 years of just talking about affordable housing, we do not have affordable housing, but we have a whole lot of luxury housing that nobody can afford, $800,000 minimum level of houses you can buy in Ann Arbor. That is a shame. That tells you clearly that this city council does not care about regular people, it cares about the rich. This city council doesn't care about Blacks, but we have to force them to care. If they did care, do you think the university would be accepting 4% Black enrollment? No, they would have been bringing it up to 10%, which is what they promised 50 years ago. Any of these guys ever pushed the university to do it? No, they haven't. Look at the Ann Arbor now. Lafiste said it. Many, many communities of Black have been pushed out of this town because of these guys. So do not be fooled by them when they tell you, oh yeah, we will have committees, we will talk about reparations. No, they will not. They will make sure that it gets grind down to the floor. So come here, speak for reparations, speak for Palestinians who are fighting, struggling against human rights abuses of Israel.
Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Mr. Stolberg, phone number ending in 534. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lowertown in Ann Arbor. I signed up to speak on CA9. I would like to thank council members for not only just pulling this from the consent agenda, but pulling it from the agenda in its entirety. I'd ask that you focus on meeting the expectations of the people. We did pass an affordable housing millage, and we do have certain expectations, and one of those was the development of affordable housing on that site at the old Y lot. It was identified that that's just an ideal location for affordable housing, right downtown, right next to the Blake Transit Center. And if you recall, there was talk about not even putting any affordable housing units there and just having a payment in lieu for non-affordable housing development. That gladly, fortunately, went by the wayside, and we had an approval for a building that would have a minimum number of affordable housing units. I forget the exact number, but a couple of towers and one would be all affordable housing. But we also approved the possibility of that building going up as high as 275 feet, which would be about 50% more than people's expectations going into that. So again, as we review this whole project and where the money's going, where it's coming from, please think about what the people's expectations were when we passed an affordable housing village and when we supported development or analysis of the city-owned sites for affordable housing. One of those sites was also 415 West Washington. That one's a bit of a shell game. What's going on there is I've spoken about it before, but the way it's designed right now, we're gonna have $0 for affordable housing from that site. And it's a bit of a bait and switch over there. We'll have nice luxury units, but no affordable housing money whatsoever. I would like to thank certain private developers who are doing the right thing in terms of providing affordable housing, providing sustainable building techniques. I want to call out the developer of the PUD on North Maple. I think it's a shining example. They've been lauding it since they first came to the pre-PUD meeting to the Planning Commission, of somebody who studied what the city wants, studied what the people of the city want, and delivered on affordable housing and sustainability from the outset, not being dragged tooth and nail, not having to negotiate. They led
30
with the
seconds.
right type of development. And I want to ask us, what kind of message do we send when we applaud a developer like that? But then what's on the agenda tonight later on, which we'll talk about the details later, were the exact opposite. Avoidance of $9 million of affordable housing, a stubbornness to do anything whatsoever of any meaning for sustainable building.
Time.
What message do we want to send? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Dish.
I wanted to say that I and a few other members of council and the mayor visited our sister city of Tübingen, Germany last week. And I feel very fortunate and very grateful to have been part of that delegation. Our hosts thoughtfully prepared to teach us about their strategies and progress towards reaching carbon neutrality by 2030. We all took a lot of notes and we all learned a great deal, and that will be informing judgments and strategies that I have and others have here sooner than later. And related, the OSI will be holding its second annual Home Electrification Expo on Friday, August 11th, from 5 to 9 p.m. at 315 Detroit Street. This is a great chance, an opportunity to find out how you can make your home greener. This is one thing that we, with our Office of Sustainability and Innovation, is farther ahead on than Tübingen is. They're interested in doing more private homeowner-focused things, but we've really got those moving with both the Solarize program and with this one. So I wanted to let you know about that. And I wanted to, he's gone, but I wanted to thank our constituent who spoke about the Cascades and expressed his appreciation for them, but did want to call our attention to the fact that it's a regional recreational attraction, not even a stone's throw from a residential neighborhood. It's in a residential neighborhood. And I am grateful for all of the efforts that staff and AAPD have made to make those things mesh better. It's still a challenge, and I hope that we'll think about ways that we might be able to further offset some of the inconveniences that have resulted from that. So thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Ms. Sigmund Fisher for coming tonight, for sharing what you shared with us. It's the first I've heard of it. I just want you to know that it concerns me greatly. I will be looking into it. I'm sure other council members whose eyes I've caught as you were speaking will be looking into it as well. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to talk with ICPOC. the Independent Police Oversight Commission, and we'll look into it. Thank you.
Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you. There was a lot of conversation at a previous council meeting about how the city handles brownfield projects, and I just wanted to let folks know that I have been appointed to the county's Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. So we'll be paying obviously close attention to projects that come forward, and serving as the city's eyes and ears on that group.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. I wanted to let Ward 4 residents know about the Almendinger Park Playground Project, because that starts the week of July 24th. Construction is expected to take about 4 weeks, and many awesome features are going to be included based on community feedback, including a new slide, nature and woodland themed climbing features, and a log crawl. I also wanted to draw people's attention to the packet. There's a transportation update in there. Some key items that I wanted to focus on were the South Division cycle track. It's been extended south between Packard and Hoover. Parking was removed. I believe, that vote was a few months ago, to make room for the cycle track. I also think this is the first protected cycle track we have outside of DDA boundaries. So I feel like as soon as I say that, someone might prove me wrong, but it's quite pleasant. Also, you might be noticing some paint markings going up around town. That's part of the Quick Build program that allows us to implement projects that make the streets safer, kind of cheaply and quickly. We can try things out and then make them more permanent later. So the paint is up, and they're about to install some delineators in places. So that's it. Thanks.
Councilmember Song.
I apologize for being late. I was actually giving public comments in Superior Township in support of Garrett Space, which is seeking rezoning for a mental health facility for youth and teens. I want to share a quick update. About 2 years ago, we had spoken about potentially limiting facial recognition technology in the city and how we police and prosecute cases, given poor precedent in Detroit and how this technology is used. And to the detriment of BIPOC folks. And we've made additional progress with our human rights commissioners, and City Prosecutor Jen Janetsky is working with us, and Interim Chief Metzer on bringing some language forward on a resolution. And our hope is that we'd have a draft and be able to come up to vote sometime in September.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. Councilmember Cornell and I had our monthly ward meeting yesterday and heard from residents a lot of different topics, but the one that I just wanted to share at this table tonight that has come up repeatedly is the issue of DTE reliability. I think I've spoken to it before, the power surge that happened in the 5th Ward, and folks are still coming to our monthly meetings, reaching out to us via email, as they receive feedback from DTE, saying that's really nothing that could have been done to prevent a power surge of this magnitude in the neighborhood that resulted in, hundreds to thousands of dollars of damage, resulted in, situations that could have ended up in fires in households, and basically asking us as a city to serve in some capacity to provide as a more neutral source of information on this matter, and to provide that level of expertise that they can't necessarily go to DTE to understand what could have prevented this past incident and what could have happened in the future. So I've made that request to the Energy Commission, but I'm also just sharing it here at the table because I think it's certainly an issue that we've heard in different neighborhoods, but this recent incident was incredibly problematic. So.
Further communications from council. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to the City Council at the July 6, 2023 regular session. To the Public Market Advisory Committee, James Bouge IV. To the Parks Advisory Commission, Vincent Cavallato and Alexa Bush. May I have a motion, please? May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved with council's indulgence. I'd like to pop back to CC1, resolution to appoint James Buzzard to the Greenbelt Advisory Commission, moved by. Well, that's why. Wait, which one? What? Did I? Julius Buzzard. Oh, that's just the first. It doesn't get mentioned. It's been asserted that it was at our previous meeting. Is that? Hold, please. Added July 11th. I don't think CC1 was moved and amended, was moved and seconded, was it? No. All right. We're just talking here. Well, since we're just talking here, I'll just say super briefly that I'd like to, for my part, express a great deal of pride and gratitude for the delegation, a sister city delegation that went to Tübingen this past week. It was made up of a number of council members and a number of members of senior staff. And I think the folks in Tübingen were impressed by our engagement and enthusiasm to learn about the project that they have there. I think, as a delegation up and down the line, come back to Ann Arbor with a great deal of energy and a great deal of inspiration as to how we in Ann Arbor in government can help better serve our community members, to structure public space, to work to accomplish our 820 goals, and to, broadly speaking, better enhance the quality of life of all residents. While we were in Tübingen, saw so much and learned so much. And, I think, the staff and council members' service will be the better for it. I am, looking forward to an anticipated visit by our Tübingen friends in 2024 in connection with, of course, our ongoing celebration of Ann Arbor's bicentennial, the sister city relationship that we have with Tübingen, and we have with our sister city in Japan, Hikone, is long-standing, and it benefits the lives and experiences of residents and has done so for decades, and I look forward to its continuance. We now have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? Councilmember Cornell?
I might be doing this out of order.
No, that's all right.
No, I'm doing it out of order. I would like to discuss CA7.
Oh, no, then you are.
Yes, then I am in order.
So you're looking to pull CA7?
Correct.
Got it. Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA7, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda, with the exception of CA7, is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA1. And that is all. CA7, resolution to appropriate and increase the fiscal year 24 Smart Zone LDFA budget by $400,000. Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of CA7. Councilmember Cornell.
Mr. Dohoney, is Ms. Prashan available to do a staff introduction?
Not an introduction, but she might be able to respond to a question.
Okay. Then let me try and parse it out here in my comments. This was prior to my election and serving on council. The state awarded Smart Zone funding to the Smart Zone entities across the state that we, our local development finance authority, benefited from, with the intention of awarding $400,000 in grants for purposes to promote our entrepreneurial-driven and high-tech economy here locally. Due to COVID, that money was not that money was not awarded for various reasons. And instead of, it was a use it or lose it situation where we would, if not spent according to the grant agreement, would have to return that money to the state. So versus returning that money to the state where it would not directly benefit our local economy, the LADFA board did decide to allocate this funding to Spark, who is our Smart Zone partner. And that extra $400,000, this increase in their budget, will go towards 2 initiatives specifically designed to meet the city's broader goals. And so the 2 initiatives that Spark is looking to implement with that funding is a DEI initiative, which would work to support and directly encourage entrepreneurial growth within BIPOC and minority communities. And the second half of that $400,000 increase would go to support innovation and entrepreneurship around circular economy initiatives. And so directly in support of 2 really important things that we've heard the community wants. So this is in addition to Spark's regular contract, the LDFA contract that we have with that organization, and is a one-time funding. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear, that this funding is for a very specific purpose and is a one-time increase in the contract.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. One need not have signed up in advance in order to speak at a public hearing, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing, that is to say, the related item on the agenda. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend the zoning map being a part of section 5.10.2 of chapter 55 of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, zoning 6.4 acres from C1AR with conditions, Campus Business Residential District, to C1AR with conditions as amended, Campus Business Residential District, 1140 Broadway Beekman on Broadway, rezoning. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Well, good evening. I'm Ron Mooch. I'm a principal with Morningside Group. And I'm joined tonight virtually, I believe, because I can't see the screen behind me, but my partner, David Strasberg, our civil and planning consultant, Tom Covert from Midwestern Consulting, and our traffic engineer, Julie Kroll from Fleece and Vandenbrink. I don't have a long speech to make. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the countless stakeholders throughout the community that have supported the project since 2017 when it was approved. Without their support, and it continues to this day, we wouldn't have the profound public benefits that the project has yielded. It's incomparable in terms of the sustainability, affordability, density, public infrastructure, property tax growth, and something that often just we forget to mention enough, I forget to mention enough, excuse me, is the reduction in the tax increment financing that we were able to achieve. So you may remember the project that was approved prior to ours that failed was able to secure a $40 million TIF commitment, and we were able to reduce that 75% to about $11 million and achieve far more in the way of public benefit. So with that, I'd just like to say I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Please just come on up.
Good evening. My name is Greg Marks. I'm a resident at 1621 Arbor, just up the hill from the 99 Maiden Lane development. And I wrote you a short letter on Friday. I hope you turn down the zoning change. And I took the effort wondering why the project had taken on the characteristics that it had to go through the city's planning commission documents, the comprehensive plan, and all the various elements of it. And every time I read one of them, whether I start with A20 and then I look at gas appliances, or I look at the Transportation Department saying they urge the Planning Commission to not approve, and then I look at the Northeast Corridor Traffic Plan, a document of several years ago, and I see how everything comes together there at the Plymouth Road, Maiden Lane junction, and there's no plan for there's no assessment of the traffic load, and that person said in the city, don't approve this to the Planning Commission. And yet we have, I just drove down Maiden Lane this evening, and I look at it and I see no bicycle paths. I see a sidewalk on one side, a whole bunch of power poles. From an aesthetic standpoint, another consideration, not a good-looking environment. It doesn't fit with what Ann Arbor design plans, again in the comprehensive plan, said. I could go on, but it just seems to me that something is seriously out of kilter. I look at affordable housing. I look at the multi-use aspects. Go back and look at the old Lower Town Commission plan of 2009 with what they thought was a desirable way to use what had been a great Kroger lot, drugstore, so on. But all that is gone. And we have something that's a very different use of the plan. So I don't understand, so I hope you don't approve the zoning and send this back to the commission for further work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Stroth, 1327 Broadway. I hope you all had time to read my letter. Yes? Good, because I don't want to repeat the letter. And I'm sorry I sent it to you twice, that the first letter said January 17th. I don't know what I was doing about that. But we need retail in the neighborhood. I'll be careful to avoid now the catchwords you seem to dislike. Preserve, protect integrity of the neighborhood, infringe, maintain character. Is it wrong for us to want to maintain and protect the character of our wonderful neighborhood? Well, whatever. Instead, I want to ask you to think about the words that you should like: sustainability, walkability, access. Every developer in this area of Lower Town, and there aren't a lot of chances left, will beg off retail because it is notoriously hard to pull off retail anywhere in the city, as many of you know. Apartments, even expensive apartments like Beekman, are apparently gold mines. The university provides developers with a hard-to-resist market of either rich students or those willing to go into debt by constantly increasing its enrollment. It is irresistible all over town to service this market and ignore our real needs for affordable housing. And we all know that the paltry requirements that developers are often forced to make by having a small percentage of lower rent units is just that, paltry. The developer of Beekman will tell you that this third building is neither the best spot for retail, nor is it the right time. I've already debunked both of those arguments in my letter to you. Mr. Moocher argues that this area historically can't support retail, but Kroger's was one of the most popular and successful stores in the city, and it failed, as I pointed out to you. It didn't fail, but it was judged by the corporate people that there should be bigger Kroger's, and so they were moved. It wasn't true back when Kroger's was there that retail couldn't be supported by the neighborhood, and it surely isn't with at least 800 new apartments in the area, along with new hospital facilities and 2 U of M parking structures right across the street. He will point to the North Side Grill block as a better place for retail, but the old party store that's there just sold for a whopping amount, I forget, something millions, and whoever bought it will no doubt give you the same argument, that retail is too unreliable for investment. A bit of retail in this final Morningside building, and I'm only asking you for a bit. Instead of a few apartments on the ground floor would be good for everyone. It will make Morningside's apartments more attractive and serve the neighborhood. Is serve a bad word? I hope not. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Hi, Steve Kaplan. I live on Division Street, just over the bridge from this development, and I've been here before, and I'm here again to continue my support for this project and to sort of provide maybe a different angle. You know, there have been discussions so far on sustainability and green initiatives, and with fires in Canada and a number of other things and heat waves, you know, it's never been clearer that we have to be concerned about these things. What I'd like to sort of bring back up is 20 years ago, we were thinking about this. There was a Green Belt Initiative that we passed in 2003. And the idea that was part and parcel of that was to close off sprawl and development going outward away from the center, which would necessitate more driving and more commuting and more greenhouse gases, but which would necessarily require denser development in core areas that are closer to major attractions in our city, the hospital being an obvious one. This building does just that. And in the time since the Greenbelt Initiative, the last 20 years, and my numbers are vague because I don't know exact numbers and I apologize, but university's enrollment was somewhere in the mid-30s, 30,000, 34,000. And now we're coming up on 54. So we've gone up by about 20,000 enrolled students in the last 20 years. It took about 5 years after the Greenbelt Initiative for the momentum of development in town to start responding to that initiative. And by about, I think, 2008, we were seeing the first buildings, 411 Lofts on the corner of Division, and Washington, Zaragon on the corner of South U and East U, where I think some of the early buildings of this type. And in the 15 years since, all of them added together, if you count the bedrooms, is 11,000 bedrooms. So we've created housing for 11,000 more students, where the demand has gone almost 2 to 1 up because of enrollment. The 800-pound gorilla in this room is the university. It's why most of us live here. It's why this city exists. And that fact necessitates everything else. We can argue that there's greed or, you know, developers do it because they like it or it's irresistible. Before you get to that point, it's necessary. Everything we worry about in terms of affordability and price points of housing is being driven by that fact first and foremost. And how we respond to it and how aggressively we respond to it in this area and in other areas will determine how much leeway we have to really address the problems of pricing after that. But first, we have to stop falling behind. We're 2 to 1 behind. We have to fix that problem first and then get to things like how we find places to build subsidized housing so that we can get multiple price points. Is that it?
That's it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with a phone number ending in 644. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Boris. I live at 1726 Charlton in Ward 5. Tonight I would like to urge City Council to reject Morningside's request to remove the current zoning conditions on the Lower Town Beekman development. Although the rezoning and altered site plan on tonight's agenda offer about 120 additional residential units, these will not likely be jeopardized by negotiating with a developer for something even better, even more advantageous for our city. The City Council should vote no on the rezoning, both because the developer is offering so little mixed use that the site will scarcely resemble the mixed-use urban village that has long been recommended by the comprehensive plan. And because this development will not move us toward one of our current planning initiatives, the 15-minute walkable neighborhood. Neither can it boast bringing us closer to our sustainability goals by significant electrification, as was suggested to the developer by the City Planning Commission. Ann Arbor residents are paying a millage for both climate action and affordable housing. In my view, developers should be part of the equation too. The Ann Arbor public should not be fooled. The current conditional zoning absolutely gives City Council the option to ask for more from this development. In other words, City Council has a choice. You can vote yes on the rezoning and likely add to Morningside's profits, or you can vote no on the rezoning, thereby giving the developer the opportunity to propose something better, something that is more in line with Ann Arbor's clearly stated goals of making our city more sustainable, more affordable, and more walkable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 345. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kitty Kahn, 5th Ward. I'm calling to encourage you to vote no on this rezoning. This is the perfect opportunity to hold the developer to his promises to make this a mixed-use urban village. If you vote no, he will have to come up with a better plan. Some have said the developer would just not build anything if this is not approved, but he has too much invested to just go away. We need housing, but the people living in that housing need stores to buy groceries and other retail as well. The developer has already gotten rid of most of the retail in this location. Hold him to his promises to make this mixed use. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich calling from the 4th Ward. And I would like to encourage you to support this and vote yes on this item, as well as the following item for the site plan approval. And I really appreciate that we are finally seeing this site developed. It's been, first a crumbling strip mall, and then with a fence around it, and then an empty field with a fence around it, and now there's buildings there. And I'm glad that we're seeing more buildings there and more people living there. And the mixed-use urban village idea that was tossed around a decade ago, or I guess a bit more than about 15 years ago or so, simply never happened. So I liked that idea. It'd be nice if we had gotten that 15 years ago, but we didn't. So I'm happy to see this going in now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534.
Hello again, Tom Stallberg from Lower Town. I've written to you talking at length about the discretion that City Council has in this vote and about what some of that means in terms of being able to achieve sustainability. I am in favor of a dense primarily residential building at this location. For those who've been around long enough, you recall that the neighborhood back 2016, 2017 was in favor of a primarily residential, very dense development at this location, and we were hopeful that it would include a mixed-use urban village and some affordable housing. We all supported that. And I do continue to support additional density, residential density on this third phase. Got no problem with that. So I want to ask you if you all understand what this means. If you get rid of the conditions on the zoning, you get rid of the discretion you have to ask this developer to build more sustainably, to include more affordable housing, to include more retail instead of a pool, for example. It then becomes more of a by right as a condition on the height limit. And the developer can build whatever he wants to build. You can approve the site plan that he's got in front of you right now, but then once you walk away with a yes vote on both these, tomorrow the developer probably isn't going to, but could go belly up and sell the property, and somebody could build something else that meets C1AR and have that height restriction, but maybe they build all office, no residential whatsoever. Maybe you want to ask staff if that's a possibility. That's up to you if you want to ask. But I want you to understand, when you take away the conditional zoning, you're not locking in the site plan that you approve afterwards. You're giving an approval to it. But the developer could build anything that meets the C1AR with the remaining conditions. I don't think you are ready for this. At a minimum, postponement is in order to understand full complexity of what this means. I prefer an outright rejection because of the arrogance of this developer and not meeting our sustainability requirements that other developers are willing to make. 721 South Forest wants to build all electric, except for gas fired.
30 seconds.
Sorry, backup generators. I believe Valhalla is offering something similar like that. Other developers are doing even better in terms of full electrification. This developer didn't want to put in electric stove. I think you need to send a message to your citizens and to other developers. No, you got to do better with sustainability. Everybody else is trying. You got to ask this guy to try. The only way to do it is to turn down this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luis Vasquez, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Luis Vasquez from Upper Lower Town. I wanted to speak in favor of this rezoning. It's going to be bringing much needed housing to the area. I mean, a net gain of about 110, 120 housing units is great for the area. And yeah, I would like to see, more offers by the developer to include, more electrification. I think that would be a great idea. But yeah, we really need the housing. So please support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Goodman, do you have a comment?
Hi, good evening. So I think if you look at the specific changes that are being proposed, these are a great win for the city. We are seeing more residential units and less parking. And I really want to say that, in that particular case, I love to see it. I think this shows the wisdom of City Council's prior decision to remove all minimum parking requirements in the city. We're seeing developers actually realize that they don't need to build as much parking as we would have previously required, and that's fantastic. I hope we continue to see that. So if I had one complaint about this tonight, it's that it's before City Council at all. So I want to vehemently disagree with one of the previous commenters that because I think this project should never have had the site plan attached to the zoning as a condition. Now, to be fair, the developer requested that because that is the only way that you can do a conditional zoning. But the developer did this only because of what they perceived the political reality to be. One of the previous commenters also already brought up the stark numbers of just what university enrollment growth is doing to us in our housing market. And that's not the only thing. I've had similar numbers of staff growth, and then there's other drivers of increased demand for housing in Ann Arbor, even besides the university. So fighting over every single site like this will never get us to where we need to be to resolve this housing crisis. We need to allow a lot more development by right. And so I think that, what is being asked of you tonight is not only a good thing to do tonight, but should have been what was done in the first place with this site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast Ann Arbor. I'd love to see more retail in this area. I really, really would. But not at the cost of exacerbating our housing crisis. It's more important to me that we allow more people to live in Ann Arbor and not have to commute in from far away than forcing the construction of empty retail spaces. Density is the key to providing the 15-minute neighborhoods we want to see. Unfortunately, historical development practices, including the infrastructure we've built that encourages more driving, works against that. The city simply doesn't have the power to magic up more demand for retail in this space. But you know what the city does have the power to do? Approve more density so more people can live in walking distance, and we can create the conditions that will allow a 15-minute urban village to thrive in Lower Town. Let's upzone Broadway. Let's upzone Pontiac Trail and Traver Road and Swift Street. Let's allow 20-floor apartment complexes by right in this whole area. And you know what'll happen then? The retail will come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi. I just wanted to tell a real quick story. I knew someone who was looking for an apartment in Ann Arbor, and they one of the places that they were looking for that apartment turned out to be at the Beekman on Broadway, the parts that have already been built, and they wouldn't have been able to do that if it hadn't have been built. And every one of these new units that gets built there, that's going to be another story just like that. People can only look for housing that's here. And so we should have housing here for those people to look at and consider moving into. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 241. Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, is that me? Yeah, hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome, thank you. Hi, so I'm new to these meetings, never been to one before, but been born and raised in this town, 25, and went to University of Michigan as well. And I guess I'm not really familiar with the zoning principles. I'll come to the next meeting more prepared. This is a little bit more impersonal, I'll come in person. But I guess the main thing with the zoning concepts that I think I'm a little bit concerned about is just as perceived person who's been in this town for a long time, it seems like everything seems to be going in a very specific direction. And if these zoning principles or whatever these, I don't really frankly care about developer rights. That's not an important part of this dynamic. I'm seeing dozens of more homeless people on the street every day. And they come up to me regularly asking me for money and having conversations with me. And it's becoming more and more concerning to me to think about these developments happening when I just don't really understand why. Like I see luxury housing coming up across from my neighborhood, more values of houses that are $800,000 to $1.2 million. Where is the housing that's under $1,000 in rent a month? I understand there's a lot of folks coming from the East Coast, West Coast, who go to school here. I went to school with many of them, but I don't think that should be where we put the value. And what I'm hearing is 100 to 150 units of housing, that doesn't sound like quite a lot. I might just be negligent on what the actual zoning policy is here. But it seems like you need to be creating a lot more housing for a specific population and be more creative about how you can get the money for low-income housing. I don't know how that works exactly, but my appeal to you all in this city council meeting is if you are to choose to make such an approval or decline, really think about whether this is actually impacting the people who actually need it most. I don't have the answer because I have not even read the policy yet, but that seems integral to this more than is about development. We have enough development here. It's a lovely city. Lived here all my whole life. I've been very privileged here my whole life, and I'm concerned about the fact that it's not an actually diverse city and that it incorporates class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2. Resolution to approve 999 Maiden Lane site plan and First Amendment to 1140 Broadway Development Agreement. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? By all means.
Broadway. First of all, the university is providing a lot of new housing, and I think we need to take that into account. It's not the situation it was a few years ago. They've started to build, they've started to buy a property so that they could build some more. And that's a good thing because they should be providing for the new students that they admit, and it shouldn't be on our shoulders to do that. As I said in my letter to you, I want to repeat that I think that the developer, was that for me or something?
It was not.
Okay. The developer could give us something for the negatives that this development has caused the neighborhood. There's a wind tunnel on Maiden Lane as well as on Broadway. We're in shadow when we walk around. We see less sky. I'm sorry if I'm bringing up humanitarian things here and not concrete stuff, but these are part of what makes life good. And not to mention the fact that it's one of the ugliest buildings in the city. And that's not just my opinion. And that reminds me that I want to say that although not many people have come to this hearing, I'm the neighborhood representative, and I know from letters that I get on our neighborhood listserv that many people are distressed by this that this new building will be going in without retail, without electrification, to the extent that it should be. And so I speak for the neighborhood as well. I want to tell you a story. At the hearing, years ago when this was first came up, one of the city council people pointed out that 1% of this project is mixed use, is retail, and that doesn't really make for mixed use. That if you bought a package of frozen vegetables and it said mixed vegetables and you got all carrots and 1 pea, you wouldn't call it mixed use or mixed vegetables. And this shouldn't be called mixed use just because there's 1% of retail in it. And we had asked for a mixed use development here. So please give us what we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Adam Juskevich, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Adam Juskevich again in the 4th Ward. One thing I forgot to mention that I meant to talk about in the first public hearing. I wasn't going to speak in both, but I wanted to mention that as this is new development and new tax base, it would be paying into our affordable housing and climate millages, and I'm glad that that would be happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment?
Hello again, Tom Stolberg, calling from Lower Town. I want to pick up on that last point of this millage. Yes, every property is contained in the millage. I hope somebody would do the math and say, well, for this brand new building, if it's all gas fired for heat, gas fired water heaters, gas stoves, and all the other climate costs, just how long will it take to make up for that? How are we going to hit our A20 goals? How are we going to hit carbon neutrality by 2030 if we keep digging these holes that are very difficult to dig out? And here we have the opportunity to not dig such a deep hole. The millage money that we are all paying is what's going to be needed, but it's not enough. We can't keep compensating for these kind of projects where there is discretion to get better climate action, better sustainable building from this. So thinking about the site plan, if you vote no on the first part, on the conditional zoning, then site plan doesn't matter because you can't do it. If you vote yes, now we have a site plan. And as I said, the way zoning works, the site plan, maybe it's never built. Maybe a completely different site plan is built. If you're going to vote on this one, let's talk about this one. City eliminated parking. Okay, so he's not going to have parking on the first floor. Great, let's have a pool instead. Second pool for the Beekman development, less than a half mile away from Fuller Pool. Does a pool pencil out better than retail? I guess so. There used to be a pita shop in this location. I penciled out fine all by itself. I guess pools pencil out, retail doesn't. You decide if that's a math that you can remember. In terms of sustainability, the complete arrogance of this developer, while the rest of us are trying to work hard on making our property sustainable, homeowners trying to make them more sustainable. I was on a green rental housing task force. We're trying to figure out how to make our existing rental stock more efficient without the cost having to be just passed on to tenants.
30 seconds.
There's going to be rules that we're all going to have to follow in the housing code. We're all working hard. We're all trying. I put in an EV charger free to all my tenants. I'm trying. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. That's not much, but I'm going to keep trying. This developer isn't even trying. What message are you sending if you say yes on both counts to this developer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is once again Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast East Ann Arbor. We need more housing. 196 units is not enough. 7 floors is not enough. This project should be exceeding Tower Plaza in height. The fact that our tallest building has been Tower Plaza since 1969 says to me that Ann Arbor is still spending too much time thinking two-dimensionally. But quite frankly, we only have so much horizontal space in the city. On climate, I'd love to see this be all electric. I'd love it to be more climate friendly than it is. But what I don't want to do is make the perfect the enemy of the good. Let's assume that one person lives in each of these 196 units. What's the alternative if it doesn't get built? 196 houses in Whitmore Lake? 196 houses down in the southern part of Pittsfield Township? That seems a whole lot worse to me. We know that single-family houses are less efficient than apartment buildings. We know that that making people drive in rather than being right here in the middle of the city is more energy intensive. So the fact that this isn't perfect is, yeah, it's disappointing. But It's better than the alternative. And we've got to remember that we need to consider this in comparison to the alternative, not in comparison to our pipe dreams. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of July 6, 2023. May I have a motion to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend the zoning map being part of Section 5.10.2 of Chapter 55 of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Zoning of 6.4 acres from C1AR with conditions Campus Business Residential District to C1AR with conditions as amended. Campus Business Residential District 1140 Broadway Beekman on Broadway rezoning. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion please of B1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, and I want to acknowledge everyone who took their time to come tonight and speak, and thank you all very much. I sympathize with very much that I have heard. So we are asked to amend the conditions of a C1AR zoning district in order to create more than twice the housing units where a less dense project had originally been envisioned. When you hear amending or lifting the condition, it might sound like we're freeing the developer to do more of what they want. In this case, we're freeing the developer to do more of what we want. Instead of an 80 condo project for sale, we will get 196 units of rental housing at a site that is ideally situated to promote walking and biking. It sits less than a 10 minutes walk from a major employer, the hospital, 15 to 20 minutes from Carytown, from Main Street, and from Central Campus. Now, as one of the callers mentioned, a change like this would normally require no more than a new site plan, which would normally not involve a zoning decision. It would in fact not even come to council at all, but would have received final approval at Planning Commission. Council is seeing this only because a condition of the original zoning specified that this project must execute the 1140 Broadway condo project site plan. Because the two are linked, we have to amend the zoning in order for the site plan to change. Now, I really sympathize with the desire for mixed use, or more peas with our carrots, as it was so delightfully put. We can affirm it. We can have plans that state a desire for mixed use, and we can zone for it. That's how you translate plans into action. And we've done all of that. But for mixed use to materialize, financiers, being the people who fund developers, not the developers themselves, have to be willing to invest in it. And many other cities give them the opportunity to make a better return on their dollar than Ann Arbor does. So we have no way of requiring mixed use. We can welcome it and we can make it possible, but we can't require it. Folks have mentioned electrification. I wish every project that came before the city were fully electric, but as a city, we have no way of requiring that. And even if we did, in this instance, fossil gas heating infrastructure is already in the ground. It was installed when the first phase of this project was constructed. But that does not mean that this project is not sustainable. Considerable contaminated groundwater was remediated when this got going. The developer installed EV chargers in the parking deck before the city was requiring them, and will install additional ones now. This phase of the project will have electric dryers, and the developer has said he is investigating electric stoves. And really a great benefit of this project is that it provides one protected bike space per unit, which is well beyond what our code requires. And these will be located at the ground level with easy egress to the street.
Councilmember.
Okay, when we come back for the site plan, I'll tell you more.
Councilmember Song.
I was really moved when I heard from folks who remembered the retail that was there at the site before. I mean, I share this, memories of Manna, the Korean grocery store there. I celebrated my children's 100-day birthday, first-year birthday with mandu, bulgogi. They had fresh tteok, which is rice cakes. It was very difficult 15 to 20 years ago to find that kind of grocery. Now we have several more Korean grocery stores in town. And it really relied on small family businesses to support this. So, in my enthusiasm in responding to some folks who had emailed, and I called our commenter tonight, I also talked about how we had approved a liquor license not too far from this site too, just last year, and my eagerness in seeing the DTE site being developed. But in talking a little bit more with council members, I think that another question came up, which is financing. So who actually pays for these retail spaces, and how do we actually occupy these retail spaces? There are reasons why we see new businesses coming in, like Taco Bell, Dunkin' Donuts, Chick-fil-A coming in. It's because they're financed to come in, and they have the funds to do this. To talk about retail in new developments and engage with developers on this end, and asking for the retail spaces, there's no guarantee that they'll be occupied. And the financial burden is on the developer themselves. So and as well as renters. So how do we support, will this be an increase in rent? I mean, it's difficult to see. It's like a chicken before the egg, but I think it's really like the banks. What are the banks willing to finance when it comes to our wishes and dreams and what we see in our community? And it's also a struggle that we see with our own public parcels. As you remember, Jennifer Hall, just a couple meetings ago, said that we're at a point where each unit is at $400,000 in costs, and that's with 11 streams of financing, right? We don't exist out of market conditions, and I'm sorry that we can't somehow capture the good memories and experiences of Ann Arbor from 15, 20 years ago, where we had small businesses that could thrive, and perhaps this is a question where we can talk more about small business support and economic development. I'm really happy to hear Councilmember Cornell speak to this earlier and how we're trying to do that work, as well as Councilmember Ayers on that particular commission. But when it comes to development and planning, it's a different beast. And I do hope with the developer here, you can understand the sentimental reasons why people would like to welcome mixed use and retail, because it's not just supporting a walkable community, but a diverse community with diverse needs, and that would rather not see large box retail in our downtown corridor. We have a lot of donut shops actually in our city supported by former refugees.
Councilmember?
We can do better. Thanks.
Further discussion of B1. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. I too remember the days of retail in that spot. I lived on Pontiac Trail when I was a child, and we took the bus to the Kroger there. We took the bus to do our laundry at the laundromat that used to be in that location. That was a particularly important commercial corridor for the neighborhood, and I understand why folks are lamenting its loss and wanting to see more of that. And hoping that there is some way to integrate it into this. I think Councilmember Dish spoke to why it's not appropriate for us to be requiring that in this development at this point. But I do think that we have opportunities. Councilmember Song spoke to the fact that we need to be thinking about small business development, and we obviously are to some degree, but there is work for us to be doing on that. I brought that up during the TC1 discussions as well. It's something that we actively need to be thinking about as we move forward. But we're also embarking on the update to our comprehensive plan, and it's important to remember that 70% of the land in Ann Arbor resident land is zoned single family only. And so right now in our neighborhoods, we don't permit the neighborhood grocery store that used to exist in places like the Old West Side. We've had places like the Knights Market and Jefferson Market, and those are historically areas where we didn't. It's not a large Kroger, but it's that small little market that existed within neighborhoods that neighbors were able to turn to. We've made that illegal. we have the opportunity to change that in the future, and I hope that folks, when they engage with the planning process, will be asking for mixed use in their neighborhoods, because I think that is the opportunity for us to bring back affordable retail into our neighborhoods and across our city. So in terms of this particular project, I'm supportive of the zoning changes. I will say for the residents that move into this location, they are in a 15-minute neighborhood. They are, as Councilmember Dish spoke to, a 15-minute walk from Carytown. There are amenities nearby. Do we want more? Yes, we do, and we need to be working on that.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ackman.
Thanks. I guess I'll echo what others have said. I completely understand why people would want a grocery store or something similar within walking distance to this neighborhood. But the way I'm thinking about the decision that's in front of us is, with this change, we're not talking about changing from them originally agreeing to retail and residential mix to a purely residential. We're not being asked to change the mix of affordable units. We're not being asked to forego sustainability items that they previously committed to and are asking not to now. We're being asked to change from 86 condos to 196 apartments and less parking. So I don't really see this as an opportunity to try to get all of our hopes and dreams and start tacking on more things that we would like, because it's not even codified in the zoning group and it was never part of the discussion for the zoning with conditions. And I also feel like, speaking to Councilmember Song and other people that have spoken, I don't feel like I'm in a position to say whether a grocery store could succeed here. And I don't want to see another empty first floor retail space. So that's it. Thank you.
Further discussion? I am going to be voting in favor of the rezoning for many of the reasons that were identified by folks here at the table. The bottom line is that we have a housing crisis in the city of Ann Arbor, and that housing prices are too high. They're too high because of, simply put, supply and demand. We are not in the position to depress demand, and so if the housing crisis, if the affordability crisis is unacceptable to us, we have a number of alternatives. We can build housing, and we're in the process of doing that with great rigor. We can permit housing, which we're doing through rezonings, and when we are offered the opportunity for a requested rezoning that meets our goals, that does expand housing in a way, in a place where it is beneficial, we can approve it. That, I think, is what the circumstance we have before us, and I'm glad that it will be moving forward. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DB1, resolution to approve 999 Maiden Lane site plan and first agreement to 1140 Broadway development agreement, moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of DB1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. So we just voted to rezone. And in doing so, have we just passed up an opportunity to negotiate with the developer? You heard that a lot in the comments. And the answer to that question is no. By law, in a conditional zoning, conditions are offered by the developer, and the developer looks for things that they think align with city priorities. Conditional zoning is not an opportunity to impose conditions and exact concessions from a developer. And even if we were inclined to do that, doing it at the council table would be unseemly, if not worse. So I want to, since we are now talking, I know it feels like we're having the same discussion again, but I want to talk about a couple of features of the site plan that we didn't get a chance to mention earlier. The developer for this project originally agreed to set aside a percentage of units for affordable housing. That agreement resulted in 15 units that are being rented out at max 60% AMI across the first two buildings of the project. The developer has voluntarily committed to extending those same terms, did not have to do this at all, to 999 Maiden Lane. This will increase the count of affordable housing units by approximately 6 units at max 60% AMI. And at the pace that we're moving, constructing affordable housing on our city-owned sites, and we are moving, it's just that this pace is slow, 18 units is not a bad deal. The project, in terms of parking, also satisfies the city's current preference to devote more space to housing people than to storing cars. The developer proposes to add just 15 additional surface parking spaces, which raises the total of spaces at this project to overall to 579 spaces, 30 outside surface, 549 in the parking structure. What is really cool about this project is it was a social science experiment for our lifting mandatory parking minimums. The project was approved under our old rules, which required minimums. The developer would have been required to provide 1 parking space per dwelling unit. The project received a variance in 2017 to provide 0.9 spaces per dwelling unit. The rental housing at 1200 Broadway has been in operation for 2 years, and demand for parking has been 0.6 spaces per dwelling unit. Now, I am not saying that that is the magic number for everywhere, but I'm saying that in a site that is located where this one is, close to the hospital, close to Carytown, close to Main Street, close to Central Campus, 0.6 looks really good, and there is no evidence of spillover into the surrounding neighborhood. So,
Councilmember?
Yay for that.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I just want to, I thought it was interesting that the word humanitarian was used earlier, and that's not one that we often hear here in chambers, and I appreciate the focus on humanitarianism, which of course is the promotion of human welfare. I think there are a number of ways to look at this, and I certainly don't discount the way that the resident was using it. I think another way, and certainly one way that I look at the promotion of human welfare in our city when it comes to density is allowing more people to live in our community. People who are going to school here, people who are working here, giving them a place to live. When I see buildings, do I sometimes lament the architecture? Yeah, but I see them in terms of the people that they house, much more so than I see the structure itself. And I think it further helps our current residents when we allow increased density, because folks are going to end up somewhere, and if they don't end up in new housing, particularly people who are going to the university or who are working at the hospital, that's more existing residential housing units that will be converted into rentals. And so by doing this, we do relieve the pressure on our existing neighborhoods. So that's kind of my take on how I see promoting human welfare and humanitarianism in promoting density in our city.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
I want to speak to the location a little bit more. A2 STEAM is pretty close by. Ann Arbor Public Schools did a major investment in updating that to a K-8 school, expanding it from a K-6 school. And that is a school that has really re-enlivened the neighborhood, brought investment, brought back families who had left the Arbor Public Schools for private and charter schools. My son finished middle school there, and I feel maybe what we can think about this development is maybe perhaps it's closer to what we see at Valhalla, which is across from Pioneer High School at 454 units. So this is a fraction of what we see across town, close to public schools, close to employer. So I think there's a lot of potential to come. Talking about retail is just one one part of what we expect in our communities, to see in our communities, right? So, and perhaps retail will come later on. I feel bad about mentioning donuts. Perhaps that was unseemly. Refugee donuts are actually very delicious. So sorry about, I'm not on planning. I am clearly not on planning commission, but I do feel some sort of a level of excitement to think that we'll be addressing the housing crisis, and then Councilmember Dish is telling me we'll have 700 units across all 3 buildings. So I guess we are beating Valhalla across town and looking at density in this area close to University Hospital and campus employer. So I'd like to see if we vote in favor of this work tonight, invite business owners and potential retail down the road. But first we have to house folks. That's the higher priority here. And I thank fellow council members in explaining the planning process to me a little bit more.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend the zoning map being a part of section 5.10.2 of Chapter 55 of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, zoning of 11 city-initiated annexed parcels on Newport Road, Bird Road, and Victoria Circle from TWP Township to R1D Single Family Dwelling District. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Dish.
Okay, so I just want to note that if you look on the agenda, it says that Planning Commission voted 5-2. We were actually unanimous in this recommendation of rezoning these 11 parcels to R1D. So these parcels come to us through the long path that has been annexation. And the original recommendation for the parcels was R1A, which is what the context is. Planning Commission had an extensive discussion of why should we zone more things R1A when we want, as I just said, and we just talked about, greater density. And so we considered whether to align the rezoning of these 11 annexed parcels more closely to A20 goals by assigning a multifamily zoning designation. And we came to the conclusion that you don't want to fight a 4-alarm fire with a garden hose, and so rezoning 11 parcels isn't really a good strategy. And we are about to have a comp plan, and we can talk systematically about what we want to do with single-family zoning. But there was something that we could do, and that was change from R1A, which has a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, to R1D. The minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, and its front and rear setbacks are roughly half. Its minimum front and rear setbacks are roughly half that of R1A. So R1D, the front setback is 25 square feet, and the rear is, or rather 25 feet, and the rear is 20 feet. So, so that's why it comes to you as R1D and not bigger. In addition, going to R4C, for example, would require different utility specifications, fire hydrant requirements, and other things. So the infrastructure in that area is not in place for that. This is something that we need to think systematically and holistically about as we think through the details of the comp plan, of how we achieve densification, given that it's going to, in places, clash with what we have for utility. And that doesn't mean that the utilities should be a limit, but it means that's a question that we need to think systematically about. So that was why it shifted from R1A to R1D, and I will, of course, vote in favor of this, as I did on Planning Commission, and I hope you all will too.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. C2, an ordinance to amend Section 127, Transportation Commission of Chapter 8 of the City Code. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of C2, Councilmember Ackman.
I can go ahead just because I'm the liaison to Transportation Commission, although it looks like they voted on this in September of 2022, so it's before my time. Councilmember Briggs, do you want want to say anything about this. It's pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
But yeah, Councilmember Briggs, my apologies.
Sorry, should be on duty in this one. So, Transportation Commission, essentially, one of the seats has been a little challenging to have consistently filled, and that's the seat of the transportation, basically a bike shop seat. And so this is opening it up to just have it more be a general seat. And, maybe a bike shop, somebody representing a bike shop will fill that during different times, but at other times it can just be filled by a resident in our community and provide their insight.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to appoint Jarek Mahrawan to the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2, resolution recognizing Garrett Space as a civic nonprofit organization operating in Ann Arbor for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license, moved by Councilmember Rodina, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion, please, of DC2. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have a pleasure of a closed session today?
Not tonight, thank you.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of the clerk's report. All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Are there communications today from our city attorney?
No, thank you, Mayor.
There being no public comment overflow, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.